Hotline. This is the Harold Washington Post 1987 Hotline TV show. Over to that fantastic commander.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Harold Washington American Legion Post 1987 Hotline. Today we have I'm going to say that one more time, a very special guest. Her name is Miss Rochelle Crump from the National Women Veterans Unite. And she's here to deliver a big, deep message, and not only for the women, which she represents, but everybody, like on our shows every week, we discuss the veterans' affairs and their problems and stuff. And also, we want to relate that, as always, we consist of women there also because they played a heavy role in our lives and our struggle for equality and stuff like that. So without further ado, here comes Miss Rochelle Crump. Killer.
Ready? Hotline, we're back. We're back with that fantastic guest, Rochelle. How you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing fine, and thank you all so
Welcome
much
to the
for
show.
having me. I appreciate the
Tell us a little bit
shout
about
out.
yourself and what do you do?
Absolutely. As you heard, my name is Rochelle Crump, and I am president and founder of the National Women Veterans United. And our organization formed in 2006. Basically, we formed because I have spent many years over about 4 decades doing veteran benefits and events and support systems for veterans' families. And so along those lines, I've noticed that there really wasn't a lot of fanfare around women veterans. Right. And so as a woman veteran, proud Army veteran, I actually challenged a few women. We were hosting the state of Illinois Women's History Month program, and I challenged them at that time as to whether or not they thought we should have a women veterans organization. My background, basically, I served in the United States Army. I'm a Vietnam era veteran from 1971 1973. I served stateside only. When I got out of the military, I actually started working as a work study student for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and then I kind of advanced along the way up into, I guess around the early 80s, I became a Veterans Benefits Counselor, Women's Program Manager, and the EEO Officer for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And so I actually left in 1996 after 23 honorable years, and basically I wanted to do something else. I had also started a homeless program outreach for homeless veterans, and that's when the Pacific Garden Mission was down on State Street. I actually linked up with Featherfist, one of the well-known support systems for homelessness, and also community organizations, and we started actually looking at homelessness in the shelters, on the street, under Wacker Drive. And so as a result of that, we started bringing people into the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And they started counting those numbers also, because they never used to keep statistics of homelessness. And at that particular time, we used to get tokens from the service organizations, and we were filtering them from one system to the other. They'd come in for services, and we'd give them a token and send them over to the Veterans Assistance Commission and or to the hospital. And of course, from there, they never got the proper services at that time, because that was the era when the VA did not necessarily know how to help veterans. And so, that's really the beginning of how the backlog started with the veterans benefit claim. That's how it starts. A few people know, but not a lot of people have the history on how that backlog got so big and how it has continued. And so I basically, when I left Featherfist, I got picked up by the mayor's office because Harold Washington had created a Veterans Council at that time, and that was in 1986. And so in 1986, he created that council. I was on that council. I served on that council for 13 years before I became Director of Veterans Affairs for the city of Chicago. And I stayed there for 5 years. I had served on the council for 13, then 5 years as a director, and then I moved on to the state of Illinois as the assistant director, being the first female and African American to have ever served in the executive staff for the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. And since 1945, so they had never had a female, had never had an African American, and so I have that title, and I think it's significant as we continue to look at veterans benefits and we get up to date, and we even look at now when we look at the White House.
Yeah.
You know, when we look at the White House, we don't see many people who look like us.
Right.
And when I say us, I mean African Americans and also for females.
Yes.
So we have to pay attention to who is speaking for us. And those service organizations have always done a good job in terms of, you know, assisting veterans, but they also look like the White House.
Okay.
So the national organizations look like the White House. They're all white males. Every once in a while, every tenure, they might have one or two females that have.
Hold that point.
Sure.
We do have a caller. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Great show. If I was there, I'd give the young lady next to you a hug and shake your hand, sir. You know what? I can't understand, like you were talking about the backlog of the veterans. How could that happen? Because people in the higher up just don't care. They just don't care. And I could prove that by nobody, what they've done to our veterans is, you know, but anyway, they just don't care because not one of them has been disciplined. None of them have been fired for what they have done to our veterans. That's a crime.
Well, thank you for calling in, caller. And let me say this in response to what you just said, because sometimes we become our own worst enemies. Because if we don't vote for those folks that are going to put our interests first, and we continue to vote for people who are going to put their interests before veterans' interests, then that's shame on us. And go ahead. You was giving us some good points.
Okay, good. So as we continue on, you know, and we get up to date now, we opened the only Women Veterans Center in the state of Illinois for women veterans, specifically to address the issues and the concerns that women have. And so, you know, across the nation, there are about 1 to 5 organizations that are, you know, making some significant progress and contributions to, you know, women's history, as well as the contributions to helping women who basically are living homeless and or living with post-traumatic stress disorder, military sexual trauma, and brain injury, traumatic brain injury.
Can you touch on this craziness that just happened with our women soldiers, where the boyfriends of these women put their pictures on the internet? How sick.
It is sick, you know, and basically you have to remember that a lot of young women, as well as young men, but I'm going to speak on the young women. A lot of young women go into the military right out of high school.
Okay.
So basically they either leave home, some of them leave shelters, some of them leave foster homes, some of them basically have been on their own for a long time, you know, even while they were in high school. Okay. And that's the biggest secret probably that nobody has ever basically researched. And what happens is when they go into the military, they go in the military growing up at that point. Some of them go to basic training, depending on what their MOS is. That's their military occupational specialty. And, you know, if they wind up going to Iraq or Afghanistan or get another assignment out of country, that's where they grow up at. They leave those places from childhood. Okay. They never get an opportunity to actually have a reasonable development like other kids do who leave home with parents, or even if it's one parent, you know, who had some assistance along the way to tell them the do's and don'ts in life. And so, you know, they leave with the premise of growing up and wind up getting involved or a relationship with someone probably who is either not in the military and or who does not support the military, but they look at them like a meal ticket is what we used to say when we were in the service, and we were warned about that years ago, and I went in the 70s. So, I don't know how that process or that information got stagnated along the way, as they always tell you, be careful about credit cards coming after you, be careful about people coming after you, because they look at the military in a high esteemed way. And so when they know you're in the military, they know you get a paycheck. And so some people, young people on drugs, they look at it like, hey, that's my girl, that's my, you know what I'm saying? I mean, just to keep the conversation real. And so I believe what may have happened during that time is there was a breakup, a bad relationship, or it was just a casual relationship. And so now, you have this outbreak of nonsense, if you will, because if it don't make sense, it's nonsense. And now the military again is facing scrutiny about bad behavior. However, I want to give credit to the military, because I did hear them say that they will help those women who basically wound up being exposed like that without their permission. One bad relationship.
I mean, they have to be traumatized.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I'm sure. And it has a stain on them.
Yes.
It's not like a male.
Well, men get over stuff
men
like
get
that.
over it. You know what I'm saying? But women, and particularly, if in fact everybody sees it, and they do see it, because people are always Googling you on Facebook and all those other social media slots where people can pick up your every move, your everything, because people are so casual about saying, I'm here, I'm there, I'm doing this, this is my friend, this is, and we have to be careful how we expose ourselves.
Let's talk a little bit about our women, and why is it that with the women's side of the military that they don't get the help that they deserve to get, unlike the men?
They don't get the help a lot of times because it's hard to prove those things that went wrong with them. That's one thing. And we'll just take the case of military sexual trauma, and that's related to also post-traumatic stress disorder. So if they don't believe in one thing, then that doesn't constitute the benefits and or, the help for the post-traumatic stress disorder. And a lot of times people go a long time, don't want to tell that story until they really have to, And so a lot of times it's disbelief about what happened and why didn't you do this and why didn't you, make a report. Sometimes it's not that easy for some of them. One is because some of them are younger, and then the older ones, they don't want to lose their career. They put time in already, and they don't want to lose that. If in fact it happened to be an officer or someone who was basically over them.
But isn't that the purpose of the JAGs, the military attorneys, to represent their interests?
It is, but sometimes they find themselves in precarious situations. For example, if I went somewhere with you and we were just friends, or even if we were dating, and I just getting to know you, and we wound up going someplace seclusive or whatever, then the table somehow always turned that it was consensual, and that fight usually is a big fight, because sometimes, it's who do you believe? It has to be a very compelling story that he did this to me, and then the point was, did you know about him? If you didn't know about him, why would you go away with him?
Right.
Why would you be in a place like that if you didn't know him? It's all types of scrutiny that women face, and so sometimes you don't want to do that fight. Some of them will walk away. Some of them will just say, forget it, I'll let it pass. I'm not going to tell anybody. They're not going to believe me. And sometimes they will be haunted with that, of the male telling them that nobody is going to believe you. I've got an impeccable record. I'm outstanding. No one's going to believe I did anything that.
Let's just stress that issue for a little bit. What can you tell our women soldiers out there, and even the ones that got out of service who have been traumatized? What can you tell them to help steer them towards getting the psychological help that they need?
Well, the first thing is to tell them that, they've always been courageous, even going into the military. And so that has to continue. They have to come forward. They have to tell their story. A lot of times They may need some support systems, and that's what the National Women Veterans United is for. We have a support system. We do peer-to-peer support.
Do you have a hotline number?
We have a regular number that they actually can call.
Can you give that
I
out?
sure can. That number is 872-731-2150. 872-731-2150. And if in fact they don't get that number tomorrow, as you know, we're on the show also. We have a show tomorrow at 6:25, and they can always call in tomorrow, and we'll give that number again tomorrow.
All right, great. We have a caller. You on the air?
Hi, how are you?
Great.
When I was in the Army, and one thing I noticed when the women said that they were going to join, they wanted to be treated equally. So why is it that you want preferential treatment on one hand, and on the other hand, you say you're my equal? So we should be able to, do whatever the man does in the Army, we should also be able to do the women should be able to do what we do. And sometimes we as veterans are resentful of the fact that you are asking for preferential treatment. And I'll hang up for your response.
Well, thanks for calling in.
Could you heard him good?
Yes, I heard him. I heard him very good.
Okay, good.
Basically, what he was saying, when it came to women joining the military, and they wanted the same equal treatment as the men, but yet somehow that coin got flipped, whereby they want special treatment instead of parity.
I don't think it's special treatment that they want. I think they want equal. Equal. You know, it's not special. It's equal. Treat me the same way you would treat a male with dignity and respect. And let me be the person who I am, who has the qualifications that can do the job.
Absolutely.
That's equal.
We have another caller. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have two friends that are women veterans. Could you give the telephone number again and give me the address of where people can locate you?
Absolutely. That number again is 872-731-2150.
Yes.
2150.
Okay.
And our location is at 7907 South Racine in Chicago. And we also have a Rockford chapter now. And so if they call us on the 872-731-2150, then we can link them up to our Rockford chapter if in fact they're not closer to Chicago. They may be closer to Rockford.
All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Thank you for calling in.
And so, let's go back to what he said.
Yes.
We're still, as women, we're still being acknowledged as auxiliary. Okay. Sometimes they want to know, because we have a all-women's color guard, for example. We've had our male comrades come to us and say, you guys did a great job, almost like veterans. Things like that. And I'll tell you, our organization is...
That's disrespectful.
That's disrespectful. And, and then a lot of times, they don't want to recognize the fact that some of our women have outranked them in many ways, and that's in their military and their civilian lives.
Right. Well, let's just say this. As men, we need to understand some of these women are our mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our aunt, our friend, and they're due the same respect that we're taught to give a male captain, lieutenant, general. Okay? So if the playing field is level and everybody's treated the same, because whether you're a woman, a man, a Hispanic, a Asian, if you get wounded on the battlefield, your blood is red.
Right. And let me just say that, we're not trying to be men.
Right.
we
don't want you to. Right, we don't want y'all to be trying to be men.
I mean, we have a population of women who basically have identified themselves as gay, lesbian, or whatever, but
Or G.I. Jane.
or G.I. Jane, whatever they want to be. But any person who actually has served in the armed forces, and just any person in general, should be respected for who they are.
Yes.
It's almost the same thing when you're talking about race relations. I should be treated as I am and not who I look like.
Absolutely.
So it's the same factors.
Yes. We got another caller. You on the air.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing there, Brother Travis?
I'm fantastic.
That's good. This is Minister Robert Florence Crump.
All right, get to your point.
Washington Sun.
Yeah, get to your point, sir.
Yes, I would like to know if your guest heard about the Honorable Mayor Washington's parade.
At this particular point, we're really focusing in on our women and their issues. Okay.
All right. But
I mean, I respect your call.
Parade. The sisters, the women need to know about that. That's a question.
But the parade have nothing to do with veteran issues as a woman. That's the point I want you to understand. So, our women have to be treated equal and with respect and dignity.
Absolutely, absolutely, because we've made some significant contributions to the armed forces, and we are not going to write ourselves out of history.
Absolutely.
And that is the reason why we started the organization. That is the reason why our organization is comprising of women who have served in every branch of service. They're enlisted, they're officers, they're still serving, some of them, and then they've served in every capacity that they could.
Yes.
We like to tell women veterans, don't write yourself out of history, because you have to tell your own story. That's why it's important to tell your children, your grandchildren, and that's just not women, that's men too, because the kids don't know anything about a lot of veterans' history, and so we have to make sure that our kids know, because every time they open up the history book, they see white males.
Yes.
So they need to know that grandma served and she wore combat boots also.
When you think of statistics, with the amount of years that you have been giving back to the community and working with our women, to what degree of improvement have you seen working with our veteran women?
Every time we think we're making some progress, we're taking 2 steps backwards.
Okay.
And that's because of various reasons. One is just what I just told you about, and that's because we don't get the acknowledgement that we also deserve. And so there is some improvement, but not to the magnitude that it should be.
Okay.
And that's in the community. It's the same way when we look at all the other cities and people welcome you home. You see the parades and you see the welcome homes in the suburban areas. We don't do that in the city of Chicago. In our
so you're
respective
saying
communities.
Some communities are better than
Absolutely.
others when they come to recognizing our women.
Absolutely. And let's not forget those women who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes,
let's not forget them. Because unless you see visually faces, nobody ever recognizes that there were over 200 women who basically made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq and Afghanistan.
See, I don't think a lot of us know. Will you say that again?
Yeah. More than 200 women made the ultimate sacrifice in Iraq and Afghanistan. And one that holds dear to my heart is the one who left a 3-year-old at the time that she served and did not make it back. And that's Simone Robinson.
And brothers and sisters out there, that is the ultimate sacrifice that our women can make in times of battle. War is hell. We want to shout out to Stand Down coming up in May. We also want to give another shout out to the Stand Your Boots on the Ground this coming Saturday, as well as the Walkathon, Telethon, and also to you veterans out there. Make sure you let your family know where your DD-214s are, your DD-214s, so that they will know when something happened to you where they can locate that piece of paper. Because it takes a little struggle to get that paper from St. Louis at the archives. So please, again, let your loved ones know where that piece of paper is.
And I want to
Sister.
thank you because,
Thank
and I'm
you.
glad you mentioned the stand down too, because
Yes.
every year we hold a stand down specifically for women veterans. Because when they go to the other stand down, they mostly have male items and giveaways. So we always have like students to come in and do manicures and things like that, and then they have women underwear and things like that that are suitable for women. So I want to thank you and
Well,
the
that's
commander for
that's
how.
an